Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Sai Marie. Today, we are stepping out of the ordinary and into the extraordinary. My guest is a master architect of worlds, a storyteller who has captivated thousands with his epic scales and legendary heroes. Blake Arthur Pill is the mind behind Ranger's Oath and the Fall of Radiance series. He's here to talk about the craft of creation and what it takes to build a legacy in the land of myth. Blake, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, to start off with, you've created these massive, sprawling universes. Was there a specific moment in your childhood or early adulthood where you realized that reality wasn't enough and you needed to start building your own worlds?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, as early back as I can remember, I've wanted to be a writer. I don't remember a specific event, but I do remember the first time I picked up a book called Dragonlance Chronicles, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. I remember that sparked something in me. And I think that was probably the moment where I was like, wow, I want to create worlds just like this with dragons and elves and magic and all the cool stuff that you don't get to see in everyday life. This probably happened when I was in middle school, but as far back as I can remember, every time I would pick up a book with a dragon or a knight on it, it just like spoke to something really deep inside of me.
That's awesome. So, in the Fall of Radiance series, the stakes are literally world ending. How do you balance that godlike power of deciding who lives and who dies with the need to keep the story grounded and human?
So, with Radiance in particular, it's told from the perspective of two protagonists, Owen, who's a ranger's apprentice, and Zara, who is a mage. And it's told from a first person present tense point of view. And what that allows me to do as a writer is it allows me to put the reader inside the character's head. And so even though they're dealing with these weighty things, like you said, end of world type situations, you're seeing these events unfold through the eyes of a person who I tried to keep grounded and very human. And I think that helps kind of keep things grounded because life can sometimes be stranger than fiction. You see crazy stuff happening in the world, but you're experiencing it through your own eyes. And as long as you keep that in mind, as long as you keep the focus on the characters and what they are going through personally, I do think that allows readers to kind of embrace the fantastical elements of the world, including like the big scary things that are going on.
Right. It makes them more relatable. I like that. So, epic fantasy is a marathon. How do you keep your creative engine from burning out when you're managing multiple series and thousands of pages of lore?
So I'm really bad at doing like really big writing sprints. A lot of authors are very prolific and they can put down thousands and thousands of words at a time. I like doing consistent, small, bite sized efforts to write my books where I'll sit down and I'll write 500 words at a time. And then I'll get up and I'll do other things. I do try to also take in stories that inspire me, whether that's reading good books, watching good shows, playing video games that spark my imagination. And I've found a balance where as long as I'm consistent, and I can sit down and write a little bit and then I can go about my day and engage with other worlds that inspire me, I find that gives me the energy and the mental clarity where I can take some of those things that I experience in other worlds and say, okay, like how can I use that inspiration for my own story? And I kind of go back to it several times during the day. I'll write a little bit on my computer, I'll write a little bit on my phone, and then as long as I'm consistent with it and I can try to do it every single day over the course of weeks and months and years, that's where you're able to write these big long manuscripts. I haven't really experienced any burnout in my days, but I also don't attack these like a sprint. Like I don't attack them like I have to get as much done as possible in a short amount of time. I look at it like a marathon. And maybe I'm even walking the marathon, where I'm kind of just going at a pace that works for me. And as long as I'm consistent, I do find that progress gets made.
Awesome. So, obviously, every hero in your books has a face, and I mean, they have to face that kind of dark night of the soul moment. Which character in your work has taught you the most about resilience and duty?
Wow, that's a great question. I learned so much from all my different characters. I do think that writing from Owen's perspective in Fall of Radiance taught me a lot about duty because Owen does have to make some tough choices along the journey. And I think Owen in particular has a really good head on his shoulders. And it's funny, as a writer, you step into the shoes of different people that may or may not be similar to how you are in real life. And I found that as you kind of step into their shoes and see the world through their eyes, you do learn lessons. You do, I've learned things from Zara.
Provided we can continue the interview, I can cut out anything that's
You can edit some stuff
yeah,
out.
yeah, I can
Okay.
edit. I can edit.
Sorry, my computer was saying like the computer was not responding. Anyway, but yeah, like stepping into characters' shoes, you do tend to learn lessons that you didn't really expect to learn just writing a story. But when you're confronted with demons and dragons and the end of the world, you do have to stop and think and say, what would I do? What would Owen do in this situation? And I think Owen in particular really, really stuck with me because he had to make some really difficult choices along the way.
So, I talk a lot about reclaiming empowerment on this show. Do you think the power fantasies we read in books are actually a training ground for people to be able to find their own empowerment in real life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that you can be inspired by heroes, fictional and non-fictional. And there are times in my life where I'm going through dark days and I think of characters that I've read about or watched, and they do inspire me. Like one of the great monologues in all of fantasy is Samwise Gamgee at the end of The Two Towers, where he's talking about there is good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. And I think that these lessons that we see in fantasy and that we read about and we see on the television screen, I do think that they can spark deep, divine things within us and can inspire us to be better people and to learn lessons, maybe learn hard lessons that we don't have to learn on our own because we've seen characters make mistakes in books, and we can say, hey, I can see how vengeance isn't the answer, or I can see how, maybe choosing this particular thing can affect you down the line. And I absolutely think that these fantasies, I can't remember who said it, but there was an author, I want to say maybe Neil Gaiman. It's slipping my mind, but he said, I've heard a quote saying that fantasy tells the truth through lies. And so obviously the worlds that we're reading about, magic doesn't exist in real life. These fantastical creatures, these fantastical worlds may not be real, but we can learn true things through these stories. And that's something I believe with all my heart.
So, your world building is incredibly detailed. How do you prevent yourself from getting lost in the research and the maps so that you can stay focused on the emotional heart of the story?
So when I write stories, I usually start with the map. I start with the world itself. And I think of the setting and what this world is going to look like. What does the magic look like in this world? What are the cultures that are on display? And then once I have some of the rules established, that's where I develop the characters. And I've never really had a difficult time, getting lost in the world itself once I have the characters. I tend to write from a character first point of view. But when it comes to research and plots and intricacies and magic systems, once I feel the rules are established at the beginning, I tend to just run with it. I tend to, okay, now I'm this character going through the world. That's not to say I don't make tweaks and changes along the way, because of course I do, and all authors probably do that. But I've found that once I set things up and I stand up the world at the beginning, that's where I can run with the characters. And then I can kind of let them direct the story from there.
So, you've been very successful in the indie publishing world. What was the biggest level up moment for you where you realized, okay, this isn't just a hobby anymore, this is my life?
Yeah. I think it was when I got the audiobooks for Fall of Radiance made. So when I first wrote Fall of Radiance, it's my first series I ever wrote, and I self-published it. I did the editing. I worked with an artist to get the covers made, and I kind of took on the marketing and running ads. I kind of took it all on myself, and I did sell some books, and I got good reviews and such. But it wasn't until I got brought on by my publisher, Athon Books, that I started to see like, oh, this author thing can be a real tangible thing in my life because Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, they were the ones who Athon was able to contract to do the audiobooks. And Michael and Kate, they did The Wheel of Time, and they did the Stormlight Archive and a lot of Sanderson's books. Hearing such talented audiobook narrators, narrate my words, my story was kind of like a big moment for me. That was when I realized like, oh, maybe I am a real author.
That is so cool. I love that. And Wheel of Time is one of my favorite series, in addition to obviously Lord of the Rings. I don't know what fantasy fan can't love LOTR. But moving forward, the relationship between an author and their readers is unique in the fantasy genre. How does your community influence the direction of the realms that you create?
That's a great question. I feel my fans give me encouragement. I feel like my readers give me encouragement with the kind emails they send me and the reviews they leave. I'm not sure I've ever been directed by my readers in regards to a story I'm writing. I kind of write the story and then they either like it or they don't. Fortunately, pretty much everything I've published, my fans have seemed to enjoy. And, if they give me encouragement in the form of emails or positive reviews, I know I'm on the right track. And so I want to do more of that sort of thing. In particular, emotionally resonant characters. That's something that I kind of prize myself with. I would say my worlds are not the most intricate, my magic systems aren't the most deep, but I would say that my characters are emotionally resonant, and that's something that I take great satisfaction in. And you know, I just I kind of rely on my readers and my reviewers and them to kind of give me the thumbs up that I'm on the right track and that if I can get an email from someone saying that they cried at the end of my book because of a certain event with a character, then that's just very gratifying for me. It's like, wow, I made you feel something, like it's a very cool thing. But as far as like, I don't really have any beta readers, alpha readers. I don't really send my books out to get proofread by readers before it goes to the editor. It's more I kind of do my thing and then I look to the fans to see how they feel about it.
Makes sense. So, if you could give one piece of legendary gear or advice to an aspiring author who is just starting their first draft, what would it be?
I would say the most legendary advice is also the simplest advice. It would be to just be consistent. Just be consistent. They say the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And these books, especially in epic fantasy, they're big, meaty books. They can be daunting to sit down and think, wow, like, how am I going to write this epic fantasy that I have in my head? How am I going to get it onto paper? And the answer is just one sentence at a time. If you can sit down every day and just write, even if it's 500 words a day, but just be consistent with it, then you'll be surprised how many books you're able to write over the course of years and decades. You'll be able to actually make them a reality. But if you look at the race ahead of you, like a marathon, and so how am I going to run that? You sit down and you despair because it's such a daunting task. I would say just take a breath and just start one paragraph at a time. Like you just got to sit down and just little bit by little bit, and eventually the story will become real.
I absolutely agree with that. I have a fantasy series called The Tales of Elisa, and it has actually been 10 years in the process. One book is out, but it is just like that. It's slow as steady to win the race in these kind of
Yes.
cases.
Yes,
So,
I agree.
if you were suddenly dropped into the world of the Ranger's Oath with no special powers, how long do you think you'd survive?
Well, I think I'd do okay because I'd probably pick up a trade or something. I'd like tan leather hides or something, kind of in one of the villages away from all the action. That's probably where I would want to spend my time. This isn't the Game of Thrones universe, so it's not one of those places where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to survive. I would say most people just kind of go about their lives just like normal. And it's at the edges, at the borders where the danger lies. But I think I'd probably do okay unless I got caught up in a battle somehow.
The battles are always the stakes are the highest moments. So,
Yeah.
yeah. What is the next great adventure for you? Are we staying in the current realms or are you preparing to launch us into a completely new galaxy?
Yes, I am currently working on a new series set in a new world, a new universe. It's called the Godsworn trilogy. I'm working on book 3 right now. I'm about a third of the way through book 3. Book 1 is with my books 1 and 2 are with my publisher, and Michael Kramer is currently narrating book 1, currently recording it. And so hopefully we can see that come to light near the end of this year, or I'd say early next year. And I'll take the rest of this year to finish book 3. And then, yeah, that one I'm very excited about because that one is more of a large scale, traditional, heroic, epic fantasy. Fall of Radiance is more light and easy to pick up, more approachable. One reviewer said Fall of Radiance is like Wheel of Time light, which I thought was a very good description. This series that the Godsworn trilogy that I'm working on now is more of your Wheel of Time, Wheel of Time. It's thick, 200,000 word plus manuscripts and a lot bigger world building, a lot deeper histories and stuff. So that one I'm really excited about. So more to come on that soon.
That sounds really awesome. That is something that viewers will need to stay in tune for because it sounds like it'll be a great series. So, finally, if your books are a portal to another place, what is the one thing you hope your readers bring back with them into their real lives?
I hope that readers, when they put down my book, that they feel inspired to know that everyone can be a hero. You don't have to have special powers. You don't have to have magic. You can be a hero by the choices you make every day. You can be a hero by choosing to be kind or to stand up for what's right, for what you believe in. I believe very strongly that heroes exist in the real world and all of us can become one. And so if a reader puts down my book and feels inspired to take up the call to action, to do what they believe in, then I would feel very, very happy about.
Well said, and I couldn't agree more. So, to the listeners, if you haven't started the Fall of Radiance series yet, you're missing out on a truly massive journey. Go pick up Ranger's Oath on Amazon or through Blake's website, and remember, the mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. Thank you, as always, for listening to The Mind of Sai Marie.